In 1884, English theologian George Hawkins Pember, who was affiliated with the Christian fundamentalist fraternity Plymouth Brethren, wrote the classic book, Earth's Earliest Age and Their Connection with Modern Spiritualism and Theosophy. Pember witnessed, during his own time, the earliest stages of the New Age movement. He observed the influence that the spiritualist movement, the Theosophical Society, and Eastern religions, such as Buddhism, was gaining in Western society. He believed that these were fearful signs that the end-time revival of the pre-flood world was taking place. The spiritualist movement, the Theosophical Society, and the Eastern religions, together, constitutes the earliest forms of the New Age movement, or what is presently known as the New Spiritualism. Broken down to its elements, the New Spiritualism is nothing more than a 21st century manifestation of the religion of the fallen angels that existed during the pre-flood world, which was first reintroduced to the post-flood world in the ancient Babylonian Empire. The present New Spiritualism movement is a conglomeration of the New Age movement, Eastern religions, neo-paganism, pantheistic nature worship, and the ecumenical movement. It is the consolidated effort by the ruling dark powers to unite all spiritual movements into a one-world religion under the guise of peace, tolerance, and the preservation of the earth. One of many accurate end-time forecasts that George Hawkins Pember made in his book was that in the last days there would be a reappearance upon the earth of beings from the principality of the air and their unlawful intercourse with the human race. Certainly, with the widespread practice of the occult in the world and the wickedness of mankind at its peak, spiritual entities are materializing into our realm of existence like never before. It was already established earlier that the demons of the earth came from the Nephilim that perished during the flood. Shortly after the flood, when Noah and his family started resettling the earth, the spirits of the Nephilim began attacking his family, tormenting many of them, leading many astray, and even provoking violence among Noah's family. And in the third week of this Jubilee, the unclean demons began to lead astray the children of the sons of Noah, and to make to err and destroy them. And the sons of Noah came to Noah, their father, and told him concerning the demons which were leading astray and blinding and slaying his sons' sons. The evil spirits that arose from the bodies of the dead Nephilim created a demonic matrix that has engulfed our reality. They are almost everywhere and ready to pounce on anyone who they sense as vulnerable. The Apostle Peter warns us about this in one of his letters. Be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, as a roaring lion, walketh about, seeking whom he may devour. Collectively, demons' main functions are to deceive mankind, spread false doctrines, inspire revolt against the one true God, provoke corruption, war, and other violent acts, and torment and perhaps kill people through addictions, disease, physical and mental abuse, and psychological disorders. Many theorize that the best description for the physical nature of these demons is that they are interdimensional. They can reveal themselves at will in our own conventional reality, yet they exist at a higher reality than what we can observe with our own natural senses. In the study of demonology, it is observed that demons gain a foothold over a given area or within an individual if they are given legal rights to enter the area or the person due to the practice of occult rituals, the occurrence of violent and traumatic events, and the breaking of God's divine law. This principle can also be applied to nations, organizations, institutions, and religious systems. In other words, forbidden acts by people create portals in which evil entities can enter. Therefore, the destiny of nations can be wrought with disorder and despair. Institutions and organizations can become operations of evil and corruption. Houses and buildings can become haunted, and individuals can become possessed or tormented, all because evil entities were given the legal rights of entry. The practice of the occult is one of the biggest reasons that evil entities are allowed to work their mischief in people's lives. That is why its practice was strictly forbidden by God in His Torah. He hated its practice, not only because it was idolatry, but it also had some real dark power. It opened the door to the demonic, and it was extremely dangerous for people. There shall not be found among you anyone who makes a son or daughter pass through the fire, or who uses divination, or is an observer of times, or an enchanter, or a sorcerer, or a charmer, or one who has a familiar spirit, or a wizard, or a necromancer. According to the Book of Enoch, during the pre-flood world, the fallen angels taught humans the occult. Semyaza taught enchantments and root cuttings. Armaros taught how to resolve enchantments. Barakel taught astrology. Kokobel taught the knowledge of astrology. Astrodel taught the courses of the moon. The Church Father Clement expounds on the theory that the fallen angels were responsible for revealing the forbidden secrets of the occult to humans. He further explains that one of Noah's sons, named Ham, discovered this knowledge and passed it to his sons. As a result, the lineage of Ham as a whole was responsible for bringing the religion of the fallen angels into the post-flood world. Fallen angels taught men the use of magical incantations that would force demons to obey them. After the flood, Ham, the son of Noah, unhappily discovered this and taught it to his sons. This became ingrained into the Egyptians, Persians, and the Babylonians. Nimrod was handed this knowledge, and by it caused men to go away from the worship of God and go into diverse and erratic superstitions, and they began to be governed by the signs in the stars and the motions of the planets. The Book of Jubilees records that Ham's son Canaan discovered occult writings carved on a rock that revealed the secrets of the fallen angels. He then passed on the secrets to his descendants, who became known as the Canaanites, who settled in the area that later became known as the land of Israel. The Canaanites collectively became notorious practitioners of the occult. And Canaan grew, and his father taught him writing, and he went to seek for himself a place where he might seize for himself a city. And he found a writing which former generations had carved on the rock, and he read what was thereon, and he transcribed it, and sinned owing to it, for it contained the teaching of the watchers, in accordance with which they used to observe the omens of the sun, and moon, and stars, and all the signs of heaven. And he wrote it down, and said nothing regarding it, for he was afraid to speak to Noah about it, lest he should be angry with him on account of it. Cush, who was one of Ham's sons, had a son named Nimrod, and together they invaded ancient Mesopotamia and established the early Babylonian Empire. They instituted the worship of the fallen angels as the empire's national religion. Some historians say Cush was really the one responsible for the monumental project of building the Tower of Babel. Cush, Nimrod, and the citizens of ancient Babylon decided to reject God as their ruler and instead wanted to resurrect the pre-flood world along with its religious system. Canaan's descendants, the Canaanites, inherited the religious system of Babylon, but they also continued the pre-flood pagan system of ancestor worship. In the system of Canaanite ancestor worship, the founder of a city-state would become a god, and he would be known as Baal, meaning Lord, and the wife of the founder would become the goddess, and she would become the Asherah, meaning princess. Some of the Canaanites worshipped an idol named Molech with human sacrifices. People would hand over their firstborn to the priests, who would burn the child alive as a burnt offering to this god. This type of human sacrifice was called passing your children into the fire. Jeremiah, the prophet of Judah, describes this practice. And they have built the high places of Tophet, which is in the valley of the son of Hinnom, to burn their sons and their daughters in the fire. The rabbinical Jewish sage Rashi also comments on this abominable practice by the Canaanites. Tophet is Moloch, an idol which was made of brass. The Canaanites heated him from his lower parts, and his outstretched hands were made hot. They put the child in his hands, and it was burnt alive. When the child vehemently cried out, the priest beat a drum, so the father would not hear the voice of his son and move his heart. The Tophet fire pits were located in the valley of Hinnom, near the southern base of Mount Moriah, located in Jerusalem. It is not the idols themselves that have the power to enslave the people spiritually. It is the evil entities behind the idol. The Apostle Paul clearly talks about how in every idol there are demons behind it to give it its power. But I say that the things which the Gentiles sacrifice, they sacrifice to demons and not to God. And I would not that you should have fellowship with demons. You cannot drink the cup of the Lord and the cup of demons. You cannot be partakers of the Lord's table and of the table of devils. Some say that the god and goddess system of the Canaanites originated from Nimrod's wife/mother, Semiramis, who developed the system shortly after Nimrod was killed by Noah's son Shem. Fearing the downfall of the Babylonian Empire after the death of Nimrod, tradition says Semiramis, who became pregnant, claimed her unborn son was the resurrected Nimrod. Some say she even lauded her son as the prophesied Messiah predicted in Genesis 3:15. Thus began the Mystery Babylon fertility cults that spread across the world throughout the centuries and formed the basis of many of the false religious systems. For instance, the Egyptian trinity of Osiris, Isis, and Horus is the ancient Egyptian version of the Nimrod, Semiramis, and Tammuz occult trinity. The Catholic mother-son idol system is nothing more than the Roman Catholic version of the Egyptian version and the Babylonian original. Many symbols of the so-called Illuminati occult fraternities come from the Mystery Babylon fertility occult system. This certainly reveals that those who control the governments and the economies of this world are in turn being controlled by Satan and his fallen angels. In occult Freemasonry, esoteric symbols are said to have multiple meanings and interpretations. One likely interpretation of the fertility occult symbols they use is that the male principle, who is Nimrod, represents the heavenly beings or the fallen angels, and the female principle represents humanity or the human woman. The mating between these two principles produces an unholy hybrid offspring, which represents the abominable act that occurred during the pre-flood world. It is clear, from the symbolism that the Illuminati fraternities openly use, that their plans are to resurrect the pre-flood world. They are continuing the plans that Cush and Nimrod had when they ordered the construction of that monument of revolt against God's authority, the Tower of Babel.